1500, go with the grain around the circumference of the bowl, do the rim. I would then move to my, say, 2600, and then with the grain around the diameter, out the rim, and I would work my way through the grits until I'm happy with the buff. Whenever I'm buffing or using micromesh, there's different types of micromesh. There's these that come in the sheets, or there's these that come in they're pads. They're almost like a sponge pad. These absorb more water. I find that the water just lies on the surface. I use them both, depending which one's closer. They both work great. Once I've done that, I've buffed, I've cleaned, I've waxed. No, I haven't waxed yet, but I've done my finishing. I've buffed with micromesh. I would wipe off that water, excess water. And then the final coat of all my bowls get waxed. Some people use the Yorkshire grit or different waxes. They work great. There's also a Renaissance wax. That's a good wax too. The waxes are really just, it gives it a good nice sheen. It's an extra protective layer, but it doesn't show up fingerprints, which is great because I do some shows, some festivals throughout the year. At these festivals, there's always kids running around with ice cream and poutine and sticky little fingers, and they come running into your booth, and this way you cannot see any dirty fingers, any sticky fingers, any fingerprints all over my work. If you can, all I do is a bounty paper towel, buff them out, good to sell. Doesn't have poutine. That's the only real reason I put wax on top of it, and I make my own. So it's really cheap. It's beeswax, mineral oil, and essential oils. I make it. It's what goes on my cutting boards. When I sell a cutting board, they get it for free. Other than that, I use it as a top coat for my shiny work. Or natural finished products like some pipes. Pipes you wouldn't want to have a high build of a finish, or a plastic that would melt and oxidize and give off fumes as you're adding heat. So with that sort of stuff, you would want more of a natural wax finish.
Now, when you do your beeswax, I'm making my own oxide. Do you make it real thin, or do you make it heavy and thick? And then also, is the mineral oil that you're using, is it a light oil or a heavy oil?
No, there's two types of mineral oil. There's a light oil and a thick oil.
Yeah.
The light oil, you can both get them at the pharmacy. They're both used, the light oil is used more as a topical oil, or a top coat, or a moisturizer, or if you have a buildup of wax, you would put the light in your ear or in your, but the hard oil is what you would drink as a laxative, so that wouldn't be a moisturizer or for softening wax. You can really use either, but the ratios will be totally different because one's thicker and one's lighter. I like using the thick better, but they're both the same, really. You just one you have to add more wax, one you have to add less wax. The thin one you have to add more wax, it'll be more watery. The thick one you can get away with less wax. And I don't make it hard, I make it a nice light paste wax. So you just take it, I think I have one here that's sort of, I'll pass this around.
That's what I like having is get the right consistency for the beeswax, like the paste.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I can go over or under, so.
Yeah, I just play with it. As you're making it, while you have it melted on the double boiler, take a little bit, pour it in a container, stick that in your fridge for 15 minutes, come back, check the stuff in your fridge if you're happy with the consistency. That'll be pretty much what it is, because you shock cool it, but then you bring it back to room temperature after those 10 minutes. That's pretty much what it will be at once it dries. Yeah, you could do a freezer or a snowbank.
So Kate, do you target 50-50 at the start, or is it around that 50-50, 25-75, or?
Yeah, my first 5 coats.
No, I mean for the wax. Mineral oil wax.
Oh, no, the wax to oil is
5 to 1?
No, like 1/3 to 2/3.
1/3, 2/3.
Something like that. I did do one where it was half and half. It was like a floor paste wax. It was far too thick.
Yeah.
So I wanted it a little thinner, so I made it 2 to 1. I also make my own beard oil. That's a different mixture, and I sell those at the show too. But
too much info.
You like it? You don't like it like a paste wax?
No.
That's what I'm trying to get. Mine's more like a paste wax.
No, I like it more. Well, it is a paste wax, but it's fluid. It's easy to move. It's easy to apply. I don't have to really use any elbow grease. And when I apply that, I apply it with a Bounty paper towel, generously, and then I leave that for 15 minutes. Any wax or oil or anything that's going to absorb will absorb. Anything that will evaporate, and then the excess I just buff into the wood or into the rag, and then that's it for applying the wax.
Okay, you keep saying Bounty. Is that important that it be Bounty type?
I use Bounty paper towel. I have used No Name paper towel before, and No Name paper towel has harder fibers, and I find it can scratch a finish.
Okay.
The No Name, all the No Name paper towels, they scratch your finish. So for the most part, I use either Bounty paper towel, which is expensive, or Costco brand paper towel, which works just as good as the Bounty. But it's like sandpaper. You don't want to cheap out because it'll give you a headache. And that's my finishing technique. Any questions? Here's these. I'll pass these around. These are on pine, so I mean it did take quite a few coats to build up a finish, but you can see through the coats how many.
You're getting used to throwing things at me.
No, I find if I'm using a lacquer or a Krylon or a spray, the VOCs and the smell can be pretty obnoxious in a house. That's also why I use these oils. They're not nearly as obnoxious. I could put a coat on in the morning, come home at the end of the day, and I don't smell finished. Or if I put 3 coats on a day, I'll have a friend over and they might say it smells like finish, but it's not so obnoxious that you can't be in my house. Yeah. And I do all my finishing in my basement. Nice. Yep, that's it. Oh. No, I didn't touch on the burner. But I can do a quick demo on the burner. Alright, some people ask me how I sign and label my work. I always label it with the wood or the species, so people forget. They can flip it over and figure out what type of wood they have or what type of bowl they have. I always sign it and then I number it. When I'm doing my wood burning, I use the razor tip wood burner, and I use the
30-second.
Yeah, the 30-second ballpoint stylus tip. This is for doing curves. The skew you would only use for straight lines because it really cuts into the wood. It's hard for doing curves and when you're signing your name. But the ballpoint ball tip is great for signing any of your work. Whenever you're wood burning, so this is pine.
I'm gonna try and catch you here.
Always think of it as a plane landing and a plane taking off. If you're too heavy-handed, You'll damage the tool. You can break it, you can bend it, but you're also going to have excessive overburn, which burns. You want to have nice, crisp, clean lines. So you're always going to have overburn, even when you're signing your name. And you want a nice, consistent speed. If you go too fast, you're going to have thin and thick lines. If you go too slow, you're going to have bleed spots, almost little dots that are excessive burn marks, and then they overburn into the surrounding area. So anything I sign, I would do the name of the wood, sign my name. I don't need to do my whole name, and then I would do a number down here. And my final pass, I would always take 240. I sand with the grain. That takes off any overburn.
So would you do that before the figure out the first
Yeah, I use that right from the lathe. I would put the linseed oil on it. I would allow that to dry for the 4 days, and then I would burn the species, sign it, number it, SKU number it, and then sand it off. Immediately it goes downstairs into my basement to be applied tunnel. Yeah. And the razor tip's great because you have your heat control. Like pine, I could burn at like 6 and it would be totally ample, totally fine. If I tried to burn 6 in honey locust, the one line on the P, I'd be there for like 15 minutes, going slow as anything. So I would want to burn, the harder the wood, the higher the heat.
But density?
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you get your sandpaper? I'm trying to find some into the higher grades.
These ones, these are aluminum oxide sandpaper. I get these from a plumbing surplus tool shop in South Oshawa. You go down Simcoe, turn left on Wentworth. It's 2 lights right across the road from the truck training AZ licensing place.
The stuff that Sia came in and showed us, are you still using any of that? Is anyone using that?
I have used some of that. It's really good sandpaper. I find it's quite pricey. It's expensive, but it's very good sandpaper and it lasts a long time. This stuff is only $1.50 or maybe $2 a sheet, and this keeps its grit really well as well. And it goes up. I would get 80, 120, 180, 240, 320, some 400, some 5, some 8, and 1,000 in these. These I like a lot more for wet sanding, but when I am doing any sort of sanding on the lathe, I like the Klingspor sandpaper, which I get from Stockroom Supply. Yeah, and it works great. It's made in Germany.
You're telling them you're getting it from the club, right?
Huh?
You're telling them Dervin Woodworking Club?
Yeah, I do, yeah. I was there at Hamilton and I bought like 4 rolls, and I see them every year. I buy a bunch of rolls, and I mean that roll is 5 meters and it pretty much lasts me a year. I cut out my own discs, and if I'm hard for sandpaper, I just cut off the little sheets. But I find those are the 2 best sandpapers I've found. Don't use dollar store. It's garbage. Once you start sanding it, the sand is in your wood, in your finish, and you're just going to scratch the hell out of anything you do further. But yeah, that's...
I have trouble trying to find those foam that just automatically stick to the Velcro stuff.
Yeah, the pads I buy or the rolls, they come with the Velcro bag sheeting. So you cut them into disc and they fit right on your drill. Yeah.
And you say, where are they?
Where our
Stock Supply?
Stockroom Supply, it's a mail order. You can find them online.
Okay.
They're out of Kitchener, Waterloo area.
After Any more questions for Kade? Guys, thanks very much, Kade. That was fantastic.